Hi. Obviously, the news right now is totally dominated by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Um, and I imagine I'll be making videos around that. It'd be hard not to because it's such a big story. It's such a profound thing that's happened. Um, there's a lot of videos, like little snippets online from various outlets, and some of them are quite poignant. There was one of a father, and he was basically making a tearful goodbye to his little girl and his wife. Um, every male in Ukraine is basically mandated to stay and defend the country. That's been, I understand now, stipulated that every male from 15 to 60 in Ukraine will now have to defend their country. Um, just as a footnote, that's something uniquely expected of men, something that feminists sometimes forget when they talk about male privilege. At times of war, the stipulation to defend one's country is uniquely expected of men. Now, that's not to say that there aren't brave women, and I don't mean to disparage any brave women who might well take up arms, but it is something that's uniquely attached to men around the world. Um, there was one video showing a young Ukrainian soldier, just 21, and he alone was looking after a bridge. I mean, this is a David and Goliath situation. The Ukrainian armed forces are not small. I understand they're about 250,000 strong, plus 900,000 reservists. Um, but, compared to the might of Russia, with 2 million reservists and a standing army of 900,000, it's a David and Goliath situation. There was another interesting video though showed a Ukrainian woman remonstrating with a Russian soldier in I don't know if it was Kharkiv or Kiev, but understandably she was very angry, asking why they were here, that they were fascists. She had sunflowers that would be in their graves. Take these sunflowers. I'm not quite sure what that meant. I think sunflowers might have a poignant symbol in that part of the world. I wasn't entirely sure about that. But what was interesting is the Russian soldier seemed to have a note of sort of reservation in his tone. He didn't get angry. He didn't push her around. Um, and one gets the impression that they don't really want to be there. It sounds like a cliche with soldiers in war, and I don't think it's always the case. I think there are times when I mean, in the Second World War, the myth of the clean Wehrmacht as opposed to the more sadistic sides of the Third Reich, it was mixed because there were definitely German troops at the time who were hooked on power and sadistic treatment of Slavic civilians. Um, but one gets the impression, at least it's only one video, but if that's the same sort of sentiments of other Russian troops, they're just following orders, and if they refuse, they'll probably be sent to a Siberian penal colony, or their families will face consequences. So I think in some ways they're just as much a victim of Putin's madness. Um, I've just read a rather nauseating article in the Daily Mail by Peter Hitchens. He's a well-known columnist in the UK. This is the article, and you get the drift there. Why I blame the arrogant, foolish West. Um, Basically, Hitchens spent time in the Soviet Union, and the entire article is based on the West grandstanding and missed opportunities. Now, Hitchens utterly fails, and I've wrote this on his Facebook page because I really think that if you're a leading columnist, you're a leading journalist, there has to be a right of retort. He utterly failed to make any acknowledgement of Russia's aggressive behavior over the years. He's utterly failed to consider that five American presidents, five British prime ministers from different parties, in his mind, they're all wrong. But no, poor Putin's been hard done by. Poor Putin has been humiliated. He utterly failed to acknowledge the industrial scale level of Russian state media like Russia Today and its Western phobic agenda. Hitchens has nothing to say about that. And there's a few, I won't even call him a useful idiot because I think he's an intelligent man. I don't think he's an idiot. And that almost makes it worse. That almost makes it worse. But after Salisbury, there was people like this going out of their way to defend Russia. It's true that Russia was humiliated after the Cold War, but this idea that the West has never reached out to Russia is disingenuous nonsense. That has been the case. Let's not forget, Russia was in the G8. So there were overtures to Russia. Hitchens is being utterly disingenuous by suggesting there hasn't been. Um, this comes down to Putin being a tyrant who believes in blood and soil nationalism. He sees Ukraine as ancient Russian territory, and it's sort of a form of, I think the word is redentism, reclaiming old land. But the Ukrainian people are paying the price. So I'm disgusted by Hitchens, but he's not the only one, unfortunately. They're in a minority, but they're a vocal minority. The Mail kind of presents it as a courageous stand, never afraid to stand alone. Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens is typically forthright on this crisis, but read how his joy at witnessing the death of Soviet communism turned to despair before dismissing his view. So he's anti-communist. That doesn't mean anything. Putin's not a communist. The thing about Putin is, I think it's not just about missing the Soviet Union. I say Putin's not a communist. I think he's more ideologically motivated by Russian nationalism than Marxist-Leninist theory. I mean, the man's a multi-billionaire. I don't think Putin's a socialist in any way, shape, or form. I really don't think that's the ideology behind Putin. So the fact that Hitchens was anti-communist doesn't really mean anything because there's a lot of right wingers in the West who are Putin stooges. I really don't think that changes his narrative and his stance. Um, you know what? I was going to encompass another video into this, but I think I'll because Ukraine is such an important issue. I think I will have this as a standalone video. There was another video. I think it was in Kharkiv of a man, an elderly man whose car was driven over by a Russian tank, and miraculously he survived. Now the tank operators must have known there was someone inside that. So, as much as I have sympathy with ordinary Russian troops, I also think there will be some that will be motivated by Putinist ideology as well. In Russia, of course, there's been anti-war demonstrations, not huge, but some of them sizable enough. And those Russians deserve enormous respect. They're showing courage. Is Putin has already vilified President Zelensky. He could easily vilify them as traitors. Um, and of course they were carted away in police vans. But I think they're just putting it out there that not every Russian supports this tyrant. That's another point that I really take issue with Hitchens. He's implying that, there's this Russophobia in the West. I suspect most Westerners don't have an issue with the Russian people or Russian culture. Again, it's disingenuous. The issues with the Putin regime, the issues with corrupt Russian oligarchs and billionaires. There has been proposals. Chris Bryant, MP, suggested that action be taken against the likes of Roman Abramovich. I really do think Putin allies should feel the squeeze. I think they should be made uncomfortable. And sure as hell shouldn't be pandering to them. Sadiq Khan has suggested seizing Russian property in London of Putin allies. Again, I support that. But also shows, this isn't as straight cut as left and right because there's right wingers who support Putin in Russia. And to be fair, there are left wingers who've called Russia's behaviour out. I think Starmer has shown leadership in this crisis, unlike his predecessor, who would be either neutral or playing the devil's advocate for Putin. There were, I believe, 11 Labour MPs who've lost their whip because they signed a Stop the War coalition statement. I mean, really, these people are deluded. I've always said if you show neutrality in the face of tyranny, you're taking the side of tyranny. Now, the Stop the War coalition, in theory, has condemned Russia's invasion, but they had one line condemning that. The entire follow up is blaming NATO and the West. That's just a total distortion of the reality. Even if you take the argument that NATO expansionism has caused this crisis, ultimately, as a sovereign nation, Ukraine has the right to join any international allegiance it wants. Um, And now Putin's threatening Sweden and Finland if they join NATO. So the Kremlin is out of control. Putin's made Russia a pariah state. All Russian sporting events have now been boycotted. He smeared President Zelensky, saying Ukraine was run by a bunch of fascists and drug addicts. If Putin's so concerned about drug addicts, maybe he should act against his Olympic team. Um, but President Zelensky, I think he's shown personal courage by staying in Kiev, but he had family killed in the Holocaust. And I'm not going to say that there aren't far right elements within Ukraine. There are, but this vilification of Ukrainians as a people, what's Hitchens got to say about that? What's his stance on Ukrainophobia from Russia? So, quite honestly, I have zero respect for Russia apologists. To be quite honest, they make me sick because I think it's just morally indefensible to back a tyranny at a time like this. I just think it's grotesque. And it's as much as Ukraine's the main victim right now, this country's been attacked by Russia. Salisbury was effectively an act of state terrorism. I'll leave it there, but I've no doubt there'll be a lot more to say about this issue. I'm also disgusted by Ofcom and their failure to act against RT. I do think now, sooner or later, that's going to come. I think, the day that I read the headline, Ofcom stripped RT of its license, I think that will be great. I mean, RT has limited influence in this country, but I don't think they should have any influence. And those who talk about free speech has always had responsibility. It's never been absolute, never. I don't see why we should give a platform to a hostile foreign media outlet, particularly when Russia heavily censors and curtails Western reports. As for Western journalists who work for RT, I wonder how they sleep at night. I really do.